In this video, we'll go over using a WAV file as a stimulus. A WAV file can be needed for modern-day devices with non-linear signal processing built in. For example, some cell phone codecs or hearing aid compressors. These types of devices don't work well with sine waves. You can use music, speech, or speech-like signals such as the P50. These could be used because they simulate a more realistic use of your device, if you are using a biased device with muting circuits, or because they're required for a standard that you're testing to. SoundCheck supports multiple sample rates and bit depths. Let's look at the editor in SoundCheck. The first thing we'll need to do is point to a WAV file on disk. This can be typed in as an absolute or relative path. So looking in Windows Explorer, I'm using this stimulus sequence. In the same folder, I have a wave called audio.wav. In my stimulus step, I can point to the relative path by typing in audio.wav. Now when I click Update, you can see this WAV file being used. Instead of manually typing it in, we can use this button on the right to open up Explorer and point to the file. I'll point to the same WAV file that I have in a different directory. SoundCheck automatically pulls in some info from the WAV file. This isn't user adjustable and it's just read directly from the WAV file. It shows if it's mono or stereo, the sample rate, the bit depth, the length, and the peak and RMS level. You can change the units of the peak and RMS levels to see them displayed differently. One thing to note is dBASL. This is required in some IEEE or TIA standards. It ignores pauses and the level is only for the active portion. As a reminder, each stimulus step can only output one waveform. If you are using a stereo WAV file, you can output either the left or the right channel, which is selectable in this dropdown. Here are the different options for level. The maximum RMS level you can use is dependent on the peak of the WAV file. These WAV files have a sample rate of 44.1 kHz because that is the sample rate of my output path. If I try and load a 48 kHz WAV file, I'll get this error message. It won't actually be loaded. If I want to use something with the sample rate, I need to match that with my signal path. I've created one with a 48 kHz hardware output. Down here I can select that output path, and then point to my 48K WAV file. As I mentioned before, we can only output one waveform per stimulus step. But if we're trying to set up a stereo test, we can do that. So here I'll change this name to P50 left. Make sure the WAV file is set on the left channel. Save this step. Then using the same 48 kHz output, I can point to the same WAV file and select the right output. Now in an acquisition step with two outputs, I can have one play back the left and one play back the right simultaneously.